of Management Studies IGNOU presents an audiobook on the course MMPC-012 titled Strategic Management for MBA Program. Presenting Block 2 titled Environmental Analysis, Unit 4, External Environmental Analysis.
Objectives. After reading this unit, you should be able to understand the importance of environmental analysis. Acquaint yourself with the broad dimensions in a general environment. Know the relationships between the general environment and strategy. Understand the concept of Industrial Organization IO model. Know the PESTEL framework for analysis and the implications of its factors. Introduction. Strategic analysis is basically concerned with structuring the relationship between a business and its environment. The environment in which a business operates has a greater influence on their successes or failures. There is a strong linkage between the changing environment, the strategic response of the business to such changes, and the performance. It is therefore important to understand the forces of external environment, the way they influence the linkage. The external environment, which is dynamic and changing, holds both opportunities and threats for the organizations. The organizations, while attempting at strategic realignments, try to capture these opportunities and avoid the emerging threats. At the same time, the changes in the environment affect the attractiveness or risk levels of various investments of the organizations or the investors. The first level of the external analysis, that is, understanding of the macro environment, has an influence on the success or failure of an organization's strategies. The impact of the changes of the macro environment is felt on the organization and its strategies through their influence on the competitive forces of the competitive environment. Assessing the external environment is also known as environmental scanning or industry analysis. In this unit, we will learn a practical approach to assessing and analyzing the external information and understand the concept of Industrial Organization IO model. General environment and strategy. A manager needs to analyze the kind of impact the change may bring in their own industry, as the impact are never same for all industries. For example, the emerging younger demographic profile of India will have very different consequences for businesses, say in healthcare or entertainment. While the former will face an adverse effect, the latter will have a positive effect, and these needs to be analyzed and integrated into strategic decision making. In response to these assessment of differential impacts, managers will be able to take advantages of the opportunities or guard themselves of the threats. Responding to these various impacts with new strategic initiatives, the managers must take notice of the fact that if the changes are significant, it may have the potential of changing the competitive rules of the game in the industry. For example, in India, the competitive rules of the game for sectors like telecom, banking and insurance, etc. in the post-liberalization period changed, especially in last few years. With the pandemic crisis, the rules have changed all the more as more stress is towards digitization. With the easing of FDI and participation of major global players, norms have changed dramatically, which is reflected in the strategies of most of the organizations in the sector. These changes can be seen in the area of technology and pricing, intensity of advertising and promotions, their business alliances, and network in the nation. Managers needs to be cautious of the fact that there may be developments which are not so easy to predict and therefore need further attention so that they can be incorporated in their strategy. In the global context, the managers must see the kind of impact any single change will have in different markets. It is quite possible that they are very different both in degree and their nature. Structural drivers to change. The PESTEL analysis gives a number of factors and their likely influences. However, it is important to identify the specific factors which may influence an industry and force them towards competitive adjustments. These factors are termed as structural drivers of change which have the likely effect on the structure of an industry or on the competitive environment. As a first step based on pestle analysis, the key driving forces needs to be identified, and then impact of the combined effect of these forces should also be made. Increasing globalization of the industry and the E-enabled era could make such driving forces capable of affecting the structure of an industry or its environment. Process for analyzing the external environment. Let us now see the process for analyzing the external environment. This consists of 3 steps, which are environmental scanning, assimilation, evaluation. The process of analyzing the external environment requires 3 steps to be followed. In the first step, the organization should gather all the information related to political, economic, socio-cultural, technological, legal, and environmental pestle trends. This can be done using internet, magazines, newspapers, etc. A periodic scanning report of these factors can be submitted for performing the external audit. The second step involves assimilation of all the information gathered. This involves assessing the opportunities and threats available with the organization. The last step in this process is evaluating. In this, the key external factor needs to be identified and a list of the same is to be made. These key factors should be important in helping long-term objectives of the organization and should be measurable in nature. Using these sources, the environmental analysis for any organization can be done. Environmental scanning. The factors or the forces understood under pestle framework put together present a highly complex and uncertain environment which are difficult to predict or foresee. From a long-term view of strategy, however, reaching somewhat closer to such forces are important in understanding the key factors influencing the success of such strategies. Environmental scanning is one of the few ways to detect future driving forces early, and this involves studying and interpreting the developments of social, political, economic, ecological, and technical events that could become driving forces. It attempts to figure out few radical happenings or path-breaking developments which may be catching on and see their possible implications 5 to 20 years into the future. The purpose of environmental scanning is to raise the consciousness of managers about potential developments that could have an impact on industry conditions, resulting in new threats or opportunities. Environmental scanning is normally accomplished by systematically monitoring and studying current events, constructing scenarios, and employing the Delphi method, which is a technique for finding consensus among a group of knowledgeable experts. Constructing scenarios involves a detailed, plausible view of how the business environment of an organization might develop in the future based on the grouping of key environmental influences and drivers of change about which there is high level of uncertainty. For example, in industries like energy, transportation, defense equipment, etc., there is a need for views of the business environment of more than 10 to 15 years, and factors like raw material, substitutes, consumption patterns, geopolitics, etc. would be of crucial importance. Foreseeing precisely for such a longer duration may be very difficult, but drawing up possible futures may be viable. It is not unnatural to believe that several scenarios could unfold over time, and these need to be understood. Scenario planning technique is briefly discussed in Unit 5 under the competitive environment. Now comes external environment. The macro environment in which all organizations operate broadly consists of the economic environment, the political and legal environment, the socio-cultural aspects, and the environment-related issues like pollution, sustainability, etc. The technological temper and its progress has been the key driver behind the major changes witnessed in the external environment, making it increasingly complex. These factors often overlap, and the developments in one area may influence development in other. For example, the opening up of economy integrated the market globally and increased the competition between private and public organizations. This forced the Indian government to revisit its economic policies. Under its new liberalization policy and economic reforms of 1991, regulations like MRTP, which restricted the size of the business and therefore inhibited their efficiency and competitive levels, were removed with a positive impact on the indigenous industries. The current political developments are sure to have an impact on the minds of business people regarding the future policy direction in certain sectors. The social considerations in the context of a developing nation like India also play a critical role in deciding the broad dynamics of the business environment. The clash of ideologies between preserving the Indian ethos and culture and giving a freedom of choice to people often create problems and confusion for business. Industrial Organization Model. Let us now discuss the Industrial Organization IO model, which forms the basis to understand the concept of strategy leading to competitive advantage. The Industrial Organization model adopts an external perspective or strategic decision making. It begins with the idea that external factors have major effects on organizations' strategic activities. In other words, this model assumes that the features and conditions of the external environment impact the formulation and implementation of strategies in order to generate above average returns and thereby gain competitive advantage. Under this model, external environment forces the organization to develop strategies to meet that demand at the same time, limiting the spectrum of tactics that may be suitable and ultimately effective. Further, the model assumes that all organizations operating within an industry possess similar set of resources. This implies that due to the similarity among set of resources, majority of organizations operating in a certain industry or a section of an industry has comparable skills and consequently pursues similar tactics. The resources required to put strategy into action are highly transferable among organizations. Significant distinctions in strategically relevant resources across enterprises in an industry tend to diminish due to high resource mobility. Let us now learn the steps involved in achieving competitive advantage. Examine the external environment, which includes general, industrial, and competitive environment, to identify the external environment attributes and both decide and limit the organization's strategic solutions. Based on the structural parameters of the industry or industries is to be chosen with a high potential for returns. Strategies associated with above average returns should be developed based on the features of the industry in which the organization plans to operate. Acquire or develop the key resources required for successful implementation of the formulated strategies and plans. The model indicates that competitive advantage will be achieved if an organization successfully implements the strategic actions which enable an organization to utilize its resources for meeting the demands of external environment. This model is important for the organizations as it helps them assess the strategic position of the organization. Let us now know the PESTLE framework. The external forces can be classified into 6 broad categories: political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal forces. Changes in these external forces affect the changes in consumer demand for both industrial and consumer products and services. These external forces affect the types of products produced, the nature of positioning, market segmentation strategies, the type of services offered, and choice of business. Therefore, it becomes important for the organizations to identify and evaluate external opportunities and threats so as to develop a clear mission, design strategies to achieve long-term objectives, and develop policies to achieve short-term goals. Here we will discuss all the 6 forces individually and then try to come to the conclusion regarding environmental analysis. A careful analysis of the above factor will help in identifying major trends for different industries. Let us now learn the political factors. Politics has a serious impact on the economic environment of a nation. Political ideology and political stability or instability strongly influence the pace and direction of the economic growth. It also contributes to the economic environment, which is conducive for some businesses to grow or indifferent for some businesses, or at times to be a hurdle. The governments at any levels, be it central, state, local, and foreign, all have an impact on the businesses. These are the major regulators or deregulators. The businesses all over depend largely on the contracts of governments, subsidies, etc., which form a major part of external environment. Any change in the laws, regulations, tax slabs, etc., can affect the organization to a large extent. Looking back into the history, due to certain ideological belief prevalent in some section of politics, few of foreign organizations had to move out of India in the late 70s. Entry barriers, protectionist policies, high tariffs, nationalist pursuits all worked towards a closed economy which continued till the time liberalization policies were introduced in 1991. This situation has a cumulative effect on making the economy weak, and the business were hardly competitive as compared to the international standards. However, in subsequent years, the political consensus developed on issues such as labor reforms, power sector reforms, importance of infrastructure, etc., and these sectors are doing a lot good for business. Economic factors. Economic factors throws light on the nature and direction of the economy in which an organization operates. The organizations must focus on economic trends in segments that affect their industry. For example, the trend of low interest rates on personal savings may compel individuals to move towards equity and bond markets, leading to a boom in the capital market activity and the mutual fund industry. Consumption patterns are usually governed by the relative affluence of market segments, and organizations must understand them through the level of disposable income and the tendency of people to spend. Interest rates, inflation rates, and unemployment rates and trends in the gross national product, government policies, and sectoral growth rates are other economic influences it must consider. The services sector's contribution to national income is increasing year after year, and the family incomes are rising faster than individual incomes. Job opportunities are more diverse, and therefore these speaks for different types of opportunities and challenges which are emerging before the business. With the opening up of the economy, trend in the global market needs a careful look. The above needs to be analyzed and incorporated in your inference for the general environment and its other forces and how all these together may influence business. Now comes social factors. Socio-cultural factors have a major impact on the markets, products, services, and customers. Almost all the organizations face challenges arising from the changes in demographic and cultural variables. Now let us discuss them in brief. Demographic factors. Demographic characteristics such as population, age distribution, literacy levels, interstate migration, rural-urban mobility, income distribution, etc. are the key indicators for understanding the demographic impact on environment. The shifts in age distribution caused by improved birth control methods have created opportunities for youth-centric product ranging from clothes to entertainment to media. The growing number of senior citizens and their livelihood needs have been highlighted, and the government is paying more attention in the form of social security benefits, etc. Considering literacy and the composition of literates in the nation creates opportunities for particular type of industries and type of jobs. For example, on one hand, the presence of a large number of English-speaking engineers encouraged many software giants to set up shops in India, and on the other, the availability of cheap labor, India becomes a destination for labor-intensive projects. Moreover, large labor mobility across different occupations and regions in recent times has cut down wage differentials greatly, and this has an impact for businesses which needs to be understood. Cultural factors. Social attitudes, values, customs, beliefs, rituals and practices also influence business practices in a major way. Festivals in India offer great business opportunity for certain industries like clothes and garments, jewelry, gift items, sweetmeats and many other. The list could be endless. Social values and beliefs are important as they affect our buying behavior. For example, a multinational fast food chain does not serve the beef burgers in India because Indians do not have cow meat since the animal is considered holy and sacred. A related example of an entertainment giant also brings out clearly the impact different cultures may bring to business. The organization which has been so successful in the US market could not be so successful in European nations because of the differences in the way in which people entertain themselves there. Due to this, they had to customize its offering in order to be successful in these markets. The spread of consumerism, the rise of the middle class with high disposable income, the flashy lifestyle of people working in software, telecom, media, and multinational companies seems to have changed the socio-cultural scenario, and these needs to be understood deeply. The pandemic crisis bringing the work from home WFH culture also has impacted the way the market is perceived. Values in society also determine the work culture, approach towards stakeholders, and the various responsibilities the organization thinks of owing to its stockholders in the society. Technological factors. Technological factors represent major opportunities and threats which must be taken into account while formulating strategies. Technological breakthroughs can drastically influence the organization's products, service markets, suppliers, distributors, competitors, customers, manufacturing processes, marketing practices, and competitive position. Technological advancement can open up new markets, change the relative position of industry, and render existing products and services obsolete. Technological changes can reduce or eliminate cost barriers between businesses, create shorter production runs, create shortages in technical skills, and result in changing values and expectations of customers and employees. The impact of information technology IT, which combines fruits of both telecommunications and computers, has been revolutionary in every field. Not only has it opened up new vistas of business, but also has changed the way the businesses are done. IT has specifically brought in another dimension, speed, which organizations recognize as their additional source of competitive advantage beyond low cost and differentiation. Manufacturers, bankers, and retailers have used IT to carry out their traditional tasks at lower cost and deliver higher value added products and services. The pandemic situation has altogether changed the way the organizations work. Artificial intelligence, robotics, cloud computing, blockchain technology, etc. have penetrated the business world to a large extent. Legal factors. Licensing policies, quota restrictions, import duties, forex regulations, FTI regulations, controls on distribution and pricing of commodities together made business difficult before the liberalization. However, with economic reforms, things have changed and legal formalities have eased. Nevertheless, with globalization, the rules of competition, trademark rights and patents, WTO rules and implications, price controls and product quality laws, and a number of other legal issues in individual nations have become important, and therefore they need to be included while understanding the general environment. Environmental factors. Environment conservation and protection is an issue which has gained prominence because of deteriorating environmental balance, which is threatening the sustainability of life in nature. Largely, businesses are also held responsible for such situations as emissions from industries polluting the air, excessive chemical effluents drained out in water making it poisonous and unfit for use, usage of non-degradable resources affecting the biochain adversely, and exposure of employees to hazardous radiations brings their life in danger. All these have been taken very seriously by different stakeholders in the society, including the government, and legislations and movements are creating pressure for environment-friendly business. These have far-reaching implications for businesses ranging from the kind of business, the product being manufactured, how it is manufactured, and how friendly it is for mankind and nature. Many multinationals that come under the purview of the society regarding the environmental hazards have started using more sustainable methods to survive in the business. The businesses are all over now concentrating more on preserving the nature than harming it. The competitive environment refers to the situation which organizations face within its specific area of operation, and this can be understood at an industry level or with respect to smaller groups called strategic groups. Generally understood, an industry in the economy is recognized as a group of organizations producing the same principal product, or more broadly, the group of organizations producing products that are close substitutes for each other, and in a given industry, different organizations have different intermediate bases of understanding its relative position with respect to other organizations in the industry. Organizations within an industry with similar strategic characteristics following similar strategies or competing on similar bases are called strategic groups. These characteristics for a particular group will be different from those in other strategic groups in the same industry or sector. There may be many different characteristics which distinguish between strategic groups. For example, size, breadth of product range, geographical coverage, quality or service levels, or marketing spend. The concept of strategic groups, when used, helps in understanding who is the direct competitor of any given organization and on what basis competitive rivalry is like to take place within each strategic group. These are competitive forces beyond direct rivals which shape up the competitive environment that can be better understood with the 5 forces framework, which we will discuss in Unit 5. External Factor Evaluation Matrix. The External Factor Evaluation Matrix, which is EFE, is a tool which helps strategists to summarize and evaluate the PESTEL factors. This involves 5 steps, which are: first, list key external factors. Second, assign weight to each factor. Third, assign rating to each factor. Fourth, determine a weighted score. Fifth, determine the total weighted score. Now let us see how each step is to be performed to find out the EFE. Exhibit 4 gives the example of EFE. First, list key external factors. Once the PESTEL is performed, key external factors are identified. In this, all the factors 10 or 20 are included which determine the opportunities and threats for the organization. Then the listing of all the opportunities and threats is done using percentages, ratios, etc. Second, assign weight to each factor. This is the second step where each factor is assigned weights ranging from 0.0, not so important, to 1.0, very important. These weights depict the relative importance to each factor. These weights are determined by comparing successful competitors with unsuccessful ones or through a group discussion in the organization. The sum of all weights should be 1.0. These are industry-based. Third, assign rating to each factor. A rating of 1 to 4 factors is assigned. This is done to show the effectiveness of the organization's present strategic response to the factor. The rating scale is depicted as 1 is equals to poor response, second is equals to average response, third is equals to above average response, fourth is equals to superior response. Ratings are organization based. Fourth, determine a weighted score. This is the fourth step and it involves multiplying weight of each factor by its rating. Fifth, determine the total weighted score. This is the last step to be performed, and in this step, a score of the weighted score of each variable is considered, and this gives the total weighted score of the organization. Let us summarize the unit, what we have studied so far. Understanding of the general environment in which an organization operates is the foremost prerequisite towards strategy formulation. The 6 broad dimensions which this PESTEL framework provides, the environment, political, economic, socio-cultural, technological, legal and environmental, are capable of giving a comprehensive overview of how things may be unfolding. The objective of the analysis of this framework, however, should not only restrict to the present and past, but the real focus should be on projecting the trends into future in order to get the real feel of the environment. This shall enable the organizations to proactively strategize for future. Considering the general environment EFE matrix is used to assess these factors. The immediate competitive environment influences an organization and therefore has to be understood alongside the general environment. It is therefore a challenging task for managers to imitate and formulate strategies which can effectively neutralize the negative impact on the competitive structure of industry generated by these forces.
We were listening to the audiobook by the School of Management Studies IGNOU for MBA program. Course code MMPC-012. titled Strategic Management. Course Coordinator Professor Neeti Agrawal. Voiceover by Chitra Gaur. Edited by Ashok Sharma. Program assisted by Tarannum Jahan. Program produced by Dr. Manoj Kumar Singh. This program was brought to you by Electronic Media Production Center of Indira Gandhi National Open University.